Welcome to the picturesque Lakes region of central New Hampshire. What's not to love about this time of the year in New England? Fall is approaching, temperatures are cooling, and there's chatter of championships in the air. But this weekend, it's not about the Garden or even Fenway. It's about fast cars, as NASCAR's finest are poised to kick off round one in the chase for the Sprint Cup right here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Who will it be? Remember, it was Clint from Kansas who pulled off the big surprise here just 1 year ago. Clint Boyer has had the kind of day that only drivers can dream about.
If he can hold it together, this could be his first one this year.
I'm telling you, Dylan, I race you right. Working on it, man. You'll be all right.
Clint Boyer realizing a dream, his first Cup victory.
Get your son out, boys. Woo-hoo! Yes! Yes, yes, yes! I knew we could do it.
We welcome you live to our ESPN coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup Series practice from New Hampshire Motor Speedway. And we invite you to join us throughout the weekend as we have a full menu of motorsports coverage coming your way. Later today, NASCAR Sprint Cup qualifying. NASCAR now at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. NASCAR practice for the Sprint Cup cars tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Little NHRA action coming your way from North Carolina. The Carolinas Nationals qualifying tomorrow at 4 Eastern. Happy hour, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. Then on Sunday at 1 Eastern Time, Cup Series action at New Hampshire presented by GoDaddy.com on ABC, beginning with NASCAR Countdown at 1 o'clock. Without a doubt, it takes teamwork to win a championship. For more on some of the super teams in the chase, let's head down to the pits. First, here's Jamie Little.
Well, Doc, one of those teams is Joe Gibbs Racing. For the first time, all three teams have made the chase. Now, while all those teams are focused on the first race of the chase here at Loudon, a lot of attention is going to be focused on their fourth driver, Joey Logano. You remember back last weekend, he was set to make his debut in the Cup Series at Richmond. But because qualifying was rained out, he was in that 0-2 car. They didn't have any points. They were forced to go home. Today, he's behind the wheel of the 96. Why? Because if it does get rained out today and qualifying later on, he will be guaranteed in the field. Home Depot is his sponsor. Right now, it's all about getting Joey comfortable behind the wheel. And if you remember back to last weekend's practice, he was top 10 the entire practice. He got comfortable real quick. Shannon Spank?
Yeah, Jamie, comfort is definitely not a problem here at New Hampshire for Richard Childress Racing drivers Clint Boyer, Jeff Burton, and Kevin Harvick. Between those three drivers, they have 6 wins at this track, including, of course, Clint Boyer's breakthrough performance last year in this race. Now, for Jeff Burton in that 31 car, he leads all drivers with 4 wins here. But he says because of so many variables that have changed, changing track conditions, the new cars, really anybody can be competitive here at this track. So this practice is very important for that 31 team to get comfortable, to be competitive, and go for their 5th win here at New Hampshire. Doc?
Thank you very much. As we begin this chase, let's take a look at how the drivers are seeded for this 10-race chase to the Sprint Cup. Remember, the seeding according to wins. You get 10 bonus points per win. You see the big jump there. Clint Boyer was 12th in the points, but by virtue of having a win, moves all the way up to 5th position. Only 80 points separate 1st through 12th. Folks, this is the closest the top 12 have been since the opening race of the year at Daytona. Hello, everyone. Along with Dale Jarrett, I'm Jerry Punch. Glad to have you with us here at New Hampshire. And DJ, if you stroll through the garage area and talk to the 12 drivers who are in the chase, what are they feeling right now?
Well, it's a little bit of a couple of different things. They have relief that they have made the chase. They have accomplished one goal that they set out at the beginning of the year at Daytona. They wanted to get into the chase. There's excitement because they are in that chase. They have an opportunity now to win a championship, but there's also a lot of pressure, the most pressure that they have faced. There's a lot of drivers in here that have faced that pressure before and overcome that. Jimmy Johnson, our champion for the last 2 years. But these guys are going to see the most intense pressure in racing that they've had this entire year coming in these next 10 weeks.
I think it's going to be a lot of things, a lot of different emotions here kicking off this chase for 2008 here at New Hampshire. Now, what about the third member of our team, Andy Petrie? Well, he's down inside the garage area. Why don't we head down and visit with Andy? Andy, what is the mood and the focus now where you are in the Harvick camp?
Doc, it's pretty loose down here in the Harvick team camp in the garage area. These guys are out on the racetrack doing some race runs. They're going to make 2 or 3 of those. Looking at the weather, that might be a good idea because they might not get all their practice this weekend. They're going to change some things like rear springs, some front geometry changes. We're going to track them as they do that so we can really focus on the changes and how they affect the car. And for more on what are the changes that they'll do, we can go down to the ESPN Tech Center and check with Tim Brewer. He can show us some of the things these guys are going to be working on.
Andy, you're exactly right. It's all about weight and balance here, folks. And what we're trying to do is work within the temperatures of the racetrack. Fortunately, it's going to be real cool this weekend, so we've got another option. NASCAR will enable you to use a rear anti-sway bar. What we can do with this, folks, is hook it to the trailing arm on the right side and the left side, and what it does, it makes the car set up and actually rotate better in the center of the corner. But if the car gets loose during a run, all you have to do is actually go over and pull this pin, and it'll unhook that bar, and it'll tighten the car back up during the run. So as cool as the temperatures that we have, we're going to throw this rear sway bar at it this week, Andy, and see how the car turns to the center of the corner.
There's a 29 car down in the garage area, and Andy was talking about their plans and their. Andy, let's just visit a little bit here with regard to what's happening down there. Is Andy, are they going to focus mostly on qualifying setup, or are they looking to also do some race setup for Sunday?
They are going to do qualifying stuff, Doc. Right now, they're a little bit loose in race trim. They're going to put the trailing arms down. That's something that's actually going to hook up the rear tires a little bit better. They'll do that a few runs, and then they are going to switch over to qualifying trim. They're going to scuff some tires to make those mock qualifying runs. They won't do that for a couple of runs yet, though.
There are some of the adjustments they'll be making down on the 29 car, and Kevin Harvick, one of the drivers, has yet to win this year, but they're getting closer and closer. 7 top 10s in the last 8 races headed down toward the chase beginning. And remember, he has been really good at this racetrack over the years. Yeah, this is a racetrack that Kevin Harvick really enjoys racing on and has a really good feel for. And it'll be interesting to watch and see if they use that rear sway bar. I've heard a lot of guys talk about that. That's something that this car really likes as we get to these 1-mile flat racetracks. Here's the 45. The reason we just have a stoppage on the racetrack, Chad McCumbee has hit the wall there, and they're going to bring the backup car out. Chad driving, subbing for Kyle Petty in the 45 car this weekend. We'll update what's going on with Chad when we come back to New Hampshire in just a moment. Back at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, getting set for the early laps, I should say, of practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup cars. He just pulled on the racetrack, and the 45 car had an issue. Chad McCumbee. Chad trying to make his second start of the year after a good run for the young man at Pocono, top 20 finish. Chad is a full-time driver in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. There are the drivers sitting, the 18 of Kyle Busch, Bobby Labonte, the 43. See the 48 there. These guys just waiting for the track to get cleaned up and go back and get a few more laps. We have cloud cover here right now, so it'll be interesting to see, again, as Andy was talking about, how many of these guys are going to be working on practice and race setup, or are they going to be doing more qualifying stuff? Andy?
Yeah, Dale, you know, it's surprising. They're second on the board right now, the Harvick team, and they're in race trim. I'm sure there's a lot of guys that are in qualifying trim making those fast laps, but these guys, they're changing the trailing arm pivots, Dale. They've got the, the front pivots they can change. They can run those things high or low. They're going to put them in the lower position, and that's going to tighten the car up a little bit. Harvick said the car was, just a little bit free, but by looking at the times, they must be pretty happy with the thing.
Yeah, it must be pretty happy with it. Couldn't be too bad off there, but that will get some more forward bite, and that's really what you fight a lot here, as long as you don't hurt that center part of the corner.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're just trying to find a good balance. They're actually going to play with some of the rear springs and maybe a rear bar combination to try to help some of that. Like you said, it's getting it hooked up off the corner here at New Hampshire makes a big difference.
We have a spin off of turn 4. 83 car spinning. Brian Vickers, and he had miserable luck at Richmond a week ago, and he has trouble here at the beginning of New Hampshire. Damage in front of his car. This is such a hard racetrack with cold, with your tires cold, and trying to get a hold of this racetrack. We don't have any heat out here. There's no sun to put any heat into the racetrack. And this, to me, has always been one of the most difficult racetracks as you try to get up to speed. And they literally had just gone back out on the racetrack, and Brian was just getting up to speed, but you don't have a lot of grip, and you can see he's made hard contact with the inside wall.
Brian, a former pole sitter here at New Hampshire, set on the pole in July of 2005. A lot of us, myself included, thought he would be one of the wild cards and make it in the chase. Had a couple of bad races, some bad luck, including last week at Richmond. Let's show you what happened coming off of turn 4.
Yeah, you can see the car just gets a little bit loose, and he really overcorrects, and then as he's really on the straightaway here. Kind of an odd place to be spinning out really by yourself. It'd be interesting to know if something might have broke on that car, but the tendency is the car will come off the turn 4. If you get just a little bit loose, you can see Brian kind of correct the car, and then it swapped ends with him and hit the inside wall.
You hear drivers and crew chiefs say this is one of the most difficult tracks on the circuit to set up for. Why?
It's just no banking there. They listed as 12 degrees, but I'll assure you, sitting in that driver's seat, you never see 12 degrees of banking anywhere. As you're going around here at a pretty high rate of speed, approaching these corners, they look just extremely flat, and so you don't have that banking to lean on. It's all mechanical grip, and you have to work extremely hard to make those tires work to the point that you don't abuse them, but you need that grip from the tires to get around these corners, and you just really fight the car all day long.
They changed the banking here in 2002 to what they consider to be a transitional bank from 4 degrees down on the bottom up to 12 degrees, as you mentioned up top, DJ. But obviously, and that has helped some, but still is quite a challenge. Let's go back into the garage area and check in on the Denny Hamlin team.
Yeah, Denny Hamlin 11th in the point standings. He's had 3 third-place finishes in a row. Right now, they're working on that car. He says as the run, of course, he wasn't able to make that many laps on that last run, but he says towards the end of the run, the car was starting to get good. However, he had a high RPM vibration in that car. So he said when he picked up the gas early, he was getting a vibration. So right now, you can see the guys under their car. They're actually making an adjustment on that drive shaft. They're turning it 180 degrees. And for more on how that's going to help the problem, let's go over to Tim Brewer at the Chevy Cutaway car.
Thanks, Shannon. Folks, what we have right here, this is a drive shaft, just a smaller version. All the drive shafts in the cars are 48 inches long. But here's how we actually balance the drive shaft in a balancer. But when we couple the drive shaft to the yoke, we can actually take the drive shaft out right here, uncouple it, turn it 180 degrees, and put it back and bolt the thing back together. And sometimes the way that U-joint sets in the yoke right there, it has a little vibration. So by turning it 180 degrees, we change the balancing aspect of it, and sometimes it takes that vibration right out of the car.
It's amazing how sometimes the fixes are just so simple.
I was always amazed that would fix the race car, and this is one of those places because you accelerate so hard and your RPMs are way down, and as you go down the straightaway, you're going to get up over 9,000 RPMs. Then if you have a vibration like that, and it's coming from that drivetrain, it really accentuates that and really literally shake the car. But just turning that drive shaft, probably 75% of the time, it fixes that problem, and that always amazed me. I could never figure out exactly how that did. I wasn't the smartest person out there, but it was always amazing that just turning that drive shaft would fix a problem like that.
Some drivers are hoping to turn their luck around as the chase begins, and one of them is Jeff Gordon. Look at the finishes the last few races there. 5th at Bristol, sort of the bright spot. He got a good top 10 at Richmond, but hoping this chase will make a difference because he comes here as a 3-time winner at New Hampshire. Jamie.
Well, good. What a great racetrack for Jeff Gordon to turn that luck around, like you were saying. Well, he's top of the speed charts with 2 whopping laps, Jeff. So what's the agenda for this practice?
It's a little early to be talking to us right now, but we are at the top. We're making a qualifying run, so I think we expect it to be towards the top just because I don't think there's a lot of other guys making qualifying runs right now. We just think this track changes so much from today to tomorrow and to Sunday that we want to make our race runs tomorrow. We thought the weather looked pretty good. Hopefully it stays that way for tomorrow, because if not, we'll have to go off of our pass notes. But no, we just want to. Felt like the last time we were here, we didn't qualify too well, and we need to work on it a little bit differently and more. So car feels great. Real happy with the DuPont Chevrolet. We had a little bit of a carburetor issue, so we're going to work through that, and we're going to take our time, make some good runs, and hopefully we have something for them later this afternoon.
You said it's a little early to be talking to you. It's been a long week for you. How was New York? You had all the guys up there in your home place.
I don't know about my home place, but no, it was great. You know, that's the thing. I feel like I have more pressure than anybody to be in the chase, because if I'm at my apartment and they're all going around doing their media, I'm going to see them everywhere and not be a part of it. So it was great to be a part of it all, as usual. New York and that chase, the events with all 12 drivers, a lot of fun. And you know, it's very rare that we ever get to kind of hang out and you know, do the things that we do together like that in a non-racing environment. And it is pretty amazing, really, when you think of it, that these 12 drivers are sitting there each day and together and not wanting to kill one another. So I think that's all changed now we got here to the track, but it was a good time.
Had a good time, busy week, and they're going to continue working on this race car, but he says so far so good, Doc.
They were all smiles on Good Morning America, Jamie, and they did the talk show rounds in New York, but those smiles now have turned to total focus in the garage area. Hard to believe, though, that a guy that's won 81 races has yet to win in 2008, but right now he is atop the speed chart. For you Jeff Gordon fans, take heart. Jeff Gordon is the quickest, although he's only run 2 laps thus far at New Hampshire. There are the 12 drivers in the 5th edition of the chase. Tomorrow night, ABC has a collision in the Coliseum as Jim Tressel's number 5 Ohio State Buckeyes take on Pete Carroll's top-ranked USC Trojans in what is the most anticipated game of the season. Saturday Night Football presented by Southwest Airlines on ABC at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. Practice underway. We've already had 2 incidents. The latest one, Brian Vickers, he's with Jamie.
Well, he went to the medical center and he checked out okay. Brian, what happened there?
I have no idea. Either I lost on the straightaway or something broke. You know, I hate it for the guys. You know, we had a car. We're really, to be honest with you, we were just scuffing tires. It wasn't even going that hard, and I was going down, coming out of 4, going down the front stretch, and all of a sudden the car just took a right and then a hard left, and I don't know.
Is the car going to be okay? Can you get back out in this practice session?
Well, no, the car's not going to be okay. This is a backup. You know, we're going to have to get the backup out. I'm sure we'll be able to get back out before the practice session's over. I don't know how much time we're going to get, though.
All right, guys, they're working hard getting this car prepared so we can get back in and get out there and get some laps. He was the 2005 pole sitter, guys.
You watch that car just snap around on the straightaway.
Yeah, it's almost like an axle broke or something as it's going down the straightaway to make it go left and then back to the right. But I'm sure they'll look at that as they move on. We see Kevin Harvick here. Andy Petrie's down in his pits keeping up with them. They've made that change to the trailing arms. He's the 3rd quickest so far. You can see if that the change that they made helped him with his little bit of a loose issue and get him a little bit more forward bite.
Kevin Harvick won this race from the pole in 2006, his only Cup Series victory here. He has been very successful in the NASCAR Nationwide Series. This is the same car that he used to lock in a top 10 finish last week at Richmond.
Yeah, what a great run they've made. They had that little problem at Indianapolis where they got caught up with Kurt Busch. But, man, they've just been on top of their game.
Momentum is so important, and look at these guys here. You see the wins for Jimmy Johnson, the 4 top 10s back, you know, with the 2nd place finishes for Tony Stewart. Kevin Harvick, 6 top 10s in the last 6 races, 3 of them in the top 5.
Yeah, they can, you know, if anybody can win this championship, and not saying that he won't win a race, he obviously has a great chance to win here this weekend, but they could do that. That team is that consistent. We see Tony Stewart rolling into the garage area there after being out on the racetrack.
Tony Stewart won the 2005 title with 5 wins on the year, but he did not win a single race in the chase. Here is a driver that we all watched and felt for a week ago at Richmond, David Reagan, who came oh so close to getting this car and getting himself in his very first chase.
Yeah, he's had a terrific year, and just his 2nd year in this series. This young man's done a really good job on the racetrack. Looked like at times last week he was going to drive his way in there, even after having a little incident and hitting the wall down in turn 1 at Richmond. But a really good season. I know they're really excited for the future having David Reagan at Roush Racing.
They are going to make an announcement about the UPS on the side of the 6th car. So congratulations for UPS and for David Reagan and Roush Fenway.
UPS competitor there, the FedEx car with Denny Hamlin. There you see the UPS car trying to chase down that FedEx car. Hamlet has been really impressive in these last 3 weeks. You know, he was pretty vocal at Michigan, got out of his race car saying they didn't really belong in the chase. And sometimes you have to say that and wake everybody up, and then they came back with 3 straight third-place finishes. This is a team, I believe, that could make some noise in this chase. They have the capabilities with Mike Ford at the helm and kind of directing Denny Hamlin that they could really be a factor when we get to Homestead.
He's a former winner here, led 51 laps back in his career at New Hampshire in the early years. And but his teammate, as well as he is doing, the teammate, and it's somewhat of a surprise, the 18 car is struggling a little bit. Let's go down to the garage area.
Yeah, Doc, if you want to find Kyle Busch on that speed charts right now, you have to look all the way down to 40th. Right now, he's really struggling with that car. He told his crew chief, Steve Addington, he has absolutely no grip, no rear grip, no front grip. He says he is sideways around the track. Definitely not the way this team wanted to start this weekend. He had a 25th place finish here in the spring, but of course, guys, that was a rain-shortened race. So you see those 18 guys working on that car for Kyle Busch right now.
Seen that happen before in practice sessions to where these guys are just off a little bit, but they did struggle here the first race. This wasn't one of their better racetracks, and the flat racetracks have been the ones that have given them problems. And just to give you an idea, folks, they're a second off of the fast time that Jimmy Johnson has put up there right now. Jimmy Johnson ran 29.62. Kyle Busch is sitting there in 40th at 30.62.
Yeah, Kyle finished 25th here back in June. There's a 29 car, Kevin Harvick, headed back out. Let's check in his garage. Andy?
Yeah, Doc, they were in and out real quick right there. Harvick really liked that change. He said it's still a little bit loose. Getting in the corner, it's pretty good through the middle, and a little bit loose off. So what they did right there is they changed, they took a little bit of the rear bar away. They've got a quick way of doing that. They just take a little bit of a pin out, which softens up the rear bar, the roll rate in the rear, to hopefully tighten the car up in the corner and off the corner, and they're back out.
And exactly what, that rear bar, explain to everybody exactly what they're trying to accomplish with that.
Well, that rear sway bar, what it does is actually puts more weight on the right rear tire when you turn into the corner and you have the car roll over, and that helps the car. It keeps it from pushing. You don't want those front tires to slide across the racetrack, so they run that rear bar, but sometimes it's too big and it can make those rear tires slide, and that's what's going on with Kevin right now.
When you hear drivers and crew chiefs talk about pushing and loose, if you get the back of the car nice and bolted down, you know, then you know, you're able to get some even grip back there. The more grip you have on the back of the car, I guess sometimes you just can't get the car to turn real well in the corners.
Yeah, that's what you fight. And at this racetrack, you will fight a lot of that, getting the car to turn in the center of the corner. You can see Kevin got a really good jump off the corner right there. And it looks like they're making gains with that car, but you really have to be careful. And especially today, I know that they want to get in a few runs, but there's not nearly as much rubber as what they're going to see even tomorrow. So as this racetrack goes on and they run more laps here, it's going to continue to change, and they're just going to have to chase that a little bit.
We tend to simplify, but it isn't that easy. Drivers will complain that they're loose in, tight in the middle, and loose off, and then I need more front grips. So if you're the crew chief, you got about 4 different issues you got to try to attack, and you make one adjustment, you hurt it somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's probably the worst thing that a crew chief could want to hear is loose in, tight in the center, and loose off. That's a pretty severe problem to try to fix, but these guys are so smart. They have their notebooks and their notes as to what can make these changes and what can work for them.
Here are the point standings as we enter the chase, and that's where they are running right now. Note that Kyle Busch, who is atop the standings, is 41st in practice. Kyle is in his 3rd chase. This is the first time the 18 team has been in the chase format since it existed back in 2004. 1 week ago at Richmond, it was a battle of the hardware cars. 2 former 2-time Cup champions, door to door in the final laps at Richmond. But when they waved the checkered flag, it would be Jimmy Johnson who would have led 32 laps and take his 4th victory of the season. Johnson has the momentum, back-to-back wins, now 4 total wins on the year. And there's the momentum heading in. The big frustration there, the early problems he had at Bristol with a cut tire, putting back in a 33rd place finish. Jimmy Johnson has been out with a qualifying trim setup, which puts him 2nd on the speed charts.
Yeah, it looks like he and Jeff Gordon are both concentrating right now on qualifying, and that is very important here for a number of reasons. Obviously, a difficult place to pass. The other thing would be a good pit selection. Pit strategy is going to be very important when we get to Sunday's race, and you want to be able to have some opportunities to get yourself one of those good pit stops.
And the pole sitter the last 2 years here has won the race. Harvick did it in 2006, and a year ago it was the 07. This guy, Clint Boyer, who sat on the pole and dominated the race. Let's listen into his radio.
It's just too cool. The track's got too much grip in it. Front end just stays real positive. We can see it's getting the back tightened up, right? Yeah. A track bar didn't seem like it did much anything to help where I was having trouble. It just made it hard to turn in the center. Maybe.
All about communications back and forth. The track bar, trying to adjust it. How soft do you want it?
Yeah, it sounds like they probably, he was a little bit loose, and they tried moving that track bar down, maybe just on the right side. You could move it down on both sides, but it hurt his center. Just like we were talking about a minute ago, Jerry, you brought up the point. You make one change, you have to see how it affects the car in other places on the racetrack, and you could hear Clint say that moving that track bar down made him too tight in the center and didn't really help his problem on the exit of the corner. Show you exactly what we're talking about with the track bar. Now they have the opportunity on the right rear here to be able to move that track bar. Andy Peter's actually the one that came up with this idea, but you can see you move that track bar down and it's going to lower that bar on the right side, and it's going to make the car tighter in theory up off the corner. And but you have to be careful in moving it too much, because it promotes some roll over there in doing that, and if you're not careful, you'll get the car too tight. It'll start picking the left front up a little bit right in the center of the corner. So there is a little of a trade-off there, and you could hear Clint say that he didn't really think that it helped him where he needed it, so they probably went back on that change. And you heard him talk about the track having a lot of grip right now because it is cool. After you get a few laps and a little bit of heat in the tires, you're going to see that they have that kind of grip. But if we're going to have that Sunday or not, that's what they're going to be trying to decide and fight that. If they don't, they'd be losing the front end. We see Greg Biffle here on the track now.
Greg Biffle, yeah, he's got to be thrilled. The second chase he has been a part of after missing the chase in 06 and 07. Greg Biffle is back in it. Let's check down in his garage area. Jamie.
Well, it's a big moment, big weekend for his crew chief, Greg Irwin, as well, Doc. He's one of 3 crew chiefs making their debut in the chase. I just talked to Greg. He's got his nose to the grindstone. Greg said the car's pretty good. They're tight in the center a little bit, but this is a car that they ran at Indy. They didn't run this car at Loudon. He said they didn't run very well here last time, but he said, we're thrilled. They went and tested at Milwaukee, worked on some things to get the car to turn better, and so far it's paying off. So we'll see how Greg Irwin and Greg Biffle do together in the chase.
Yeah, Jamie, this car finished 8th at Indianapolis. Talking about long straightaways and flat turns. You got fairly shorter straightaways, but still flat turns here. Look at Greg Biffle's last 4 races here at New Hampshire. His best finish 13th in this race a year ago. Tony Stewart in the 20 car. We mentioned he is one of the 5 drivers in the chase that is yet to win in 2008, but he came so very close here back in the spring, DJ, when he led 132 laps.
Yeah, you can tell. There was an interview with Tony after the race, after the rains came, and took away his chance of winning. He ran such a great race and then just didn't get the opportunity at the end to put this car in victory lane. And they know that a couple of those times have slipped away, but this is my pick really to win here. And I know that's kind of crazy after hearing what went on after the race and everything last week, but I really believe Tony Stewart has a chance to end that victory drought this weekend here.
I think he is focused and they are fired up, and they're making some changes down there in the Harvick camp. Andy.
Yeah, Doc, they're going to change this left front spring. This is the one that came out of the car. They're going to soften it up a little bit. They must have heard you guys talking about that track bar, because they were going to change that. And I actually talked to Todd. I said, well, Clint said it didn't help his car where they needed it. He said, well, let's just change the left front spring. So that's what they're doing here. They're going to try to tighten him up just a little bit more. They're getting pretty good, though.
Todd Barrier, you heard Andy talking about Todd. It's Todd Barrier, the crew chief down there And they basically, I guess, as a driver, did you like it when they changed a lot of things during practice, or did you prefer one adjustment at a time?
Yeah, most of the time, if we had time, I would just prefer one change at a time to be able to feel that and know exactly what that did. If you change 2 or 3 things on the car, and even if you make it better, you're not exactly sure which one of those things made it better. And Andy, what exactly are they trying to accomplish with changing that left front spring and tightening the car up?
Well, Dale, they're just trying to fine-tune the car. It's really pretty good. I'm actually surprised that they're changing as many things as they are, but they're looking for a little bit of, rear grip. The front end's turning really well, so it might be turning just a little too good. And if they change this left front spring and it tightens the car up a little bit, it could actually give them a little aero advantage too. So that's a good place to go. We go down to Tim Brewer and see what he can tell us about this kind of change.
Look down here, Andy. We've got the spring pocket right down in underneath here. The shock absorber is actually hooked right here. What they're trying to do is a big compromise and getting the car down on the ground to where it can actually set down on the bump stop right here. But what they do, they'll change this spring rate about 50 pounds. That'll enable the car to get down and actually tighten the car up. That's what they're trying to achieve right here.
Tim, that's a great explanation. We understand they're trying to lower the car and be able to get it down there where they can get the car, I guess, in the corner.
Yeah, and that's a great example that even though you're trying to hook the back end of the car up, you don't always have to go to the back of the car to make that happen. You can make the back end of the car better by changing something on the front end. So there's just so many adjustments that these guys have in their toolbox to make changes on these cars and make the drivers happy.
The drivers themselves can adjust the handling of the car just by how they enter or exit the turns here. We'll talk about the different grooves. There really are 2 grooves at New Hampshire where there weren't years ago. You are watching the 48 Jimmy Johnson, the reigning and 2-time Cup Series champion, coming off back-to-back wins. Is he the favorite in the chase? Could it be Carl Edwards or Kyle Busch? More Cup practice in a moment.
129.
NASCAR Sprint Cup practice at New Hampshire. Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon atop the speed charts. But look at the non-chase drivers who are trying to be the spoilers for the weekend. Pretty good names up there. Casey Mears, who ran so well here in the spring and had one of the best cars, led over 50 laps. And how about Patrick Carpentier, who became the first ever rookie to sit on the pole at New Hampshire back in the spring. Jamie.
And he sits 4th right now. So, Patrick, what is it about this track that you've adjusted so quickly to?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I looked at the notes I took from last time we were here, and it's exactly the same, the way to drive it. And we're still in full race trim, so we're switching now to a qualifying trim. Hopefully, it's going to be as fast as the race trim, because the race trim's pretty good. So, I don't know. The car is really good, and I get that track well. So, hopefully, we get maybe we'll get another pole. We'll see.
How does the car feel compared to last time here?
Yeah, it feels very similar to what we had last time here. I see a lot of guys slipping and sliding around the track, but so far, I'll touch wood, we seem to be okay. I mean, the Berlin City Auto Group car is fast. I go in really hard and I come out, and it does what I want it to do, which is a pretty rare thing with the COT, so it's good.
Patrick, we were just talking about what's going to happen after this season. Any leads so far? Are we going to see you back in the Cup Series in 09?
Yeah, I hope I don't have to go back on a farm like I did in 06, but we'll see what happens. You know, it's for sure it's a bit of a shock to me, but it's part of racing, and I mean, the Gillette gave me a first opportunity that I truly enjoyed. So we're still talking to a couple of teams, and it's looking good, but if not, we'll try to go in the truck series. I love that series. I tried it at Bristol and had a lot of fun, so but I'm sure we'll be racing next year.
Well, Doc, he comes from open wheel racing, but he told me this is where it's at. He's having so much fun, and he really wants to be here. And he said, but hey, if I don't get a ride for next year, I get to watch my kids grow up.
He is a talented race driver. 4 top 20 finishes. Been the top rookie 6 times thus far in 2008, with the best finish of 14th at Daytona. Dale Earnhardt Jr., there's the 88 car. They're trying to get their Chevy dialed in. Let's listen into the radio.
Yeah, we're getting too much bump stop in the center. We need to take some shim out. I don't know, we can science on them a little bit tomorrow if you want to study on them a little bit there. It's nothing like what we had down in the center, and that's where you're trying to gain the advantage. A little bit too much bump stop in the center.
Talking about too much bump stop, and I guess it's a bit of a compromise as to how much the car will move. Watch the 20 car.
Yeah, these guys, they're running such soft springs. We saw that one that Kevin Harvick was putting in. You can see this car going down the straightaway, how much it's moving. The front just kind of porpoising up and down, and you see the sparks coming out. They're actually hitting something underneath the car even more than the splitter. Brewer, how about that? You got more? Tell us exactly what's going on here.
Yeah, I can tell you, DJ. Right here's the spacers that we actually use on the shock absorber. We can use an inch. We can use a quarter of an inch. We can actually use an eighth of an inch. But they've got inserts that they actually put in between these things when they're trying to add to it. But when they try to take it apart, DJ, they have to come over here, loosen up the nut, take the piston off, take the shim stack off, and actually remove this. Now, you can't go in there and snip that thing off, but for practicing, you know, we can make shift with just putting a spacer in there. But when you talk about that spring rubber out on the racetrack a while ago, the guys actually come over here and they'll hang these spring rubbers with a tie wrap right here, and we've got a cord where you can actually pull a thing out and put it in. But occasionally this thing gets up in the spring and it mashes itself, cuts it, thing falls out on the racetrack.
Tim, it's a great example of how they have to pull the shocks apart. But if you have teammates, as Jimmy Johnson and Dale Earnhardt Jr. are, these guys can try different things and then get together and discuss it and compare notes. Shannon?
Yeah, Doc, well, one thing that the 48, 24, and 5 car all did similar starting today's practice is that they all started in qualifying trim. Now, I spoke with Alan Gustafson, who is crew chief for Casey Mears, who's having a great practice right now in that qualifying trim. He said, you know, qualifying is so important here. He said, when we've run here in the past, we know we can run well here. We're able to go back to those notes, set our cars up based on those notes. But if we do not get a good qualifying position, then the race may be very difficult for us regardless of how our cars are set up. So all 3 of those teams started today's practice in qualifying trim.
Back in June, Casey Mears started 24th and led 53 laps here at New Hampshire. And if the rains hadn't come, I've got to believe Casey could have had a top 2 or 3 finish. Ended up finishing 7th anyway, got back to 7th spot, but was very good here in June. And now he is one of the best cars here in this practice session.
Yeah, they're 4th on the charts right now, and that was great to see him run that well here. And I know he had to be excited about coming back here and his chances to kind of spoil the chase guys. You know, he could come here and actually win this race and kind of take the focus away from what all of those other guys are doing.
Casey will be going to Richard Childress Racing in 2009. He'll be taking over the 07 car that Clint Boyer is in this year. He'll have Gil Martin and all that crew. Clint will be going to the new 33 car, which is the 4th team. Here's the Richard Childress car for Kevin Harvick back in the garage. Andy.
Yeah, these guys, they changed that spring, and it was just a small amount of help, he said. He said it just helped them slightly through the middle of the corner. Still need a little bit of help with those rear tires. It says it scoots the rear tires right when he goes to the gas. They're going to go ahead and try that track bar. They're going to lower it both sides about a ½ inch right here.
Dale, I hear drivers talk about it in New Hampshire. You'd really have to drive the car in the corner. You have to really attack the corner. And someone said you drive it in, you let it slide, you wait, and you pick up the throttle. How long do you let it slide?
Yeah, that's just a kind of a driver preference, how long you're going to let the car go. You really want to, as you drive down into the corner, you're going to get on the brakes pretty hard, and then you want the car to really roll fast to that center part of the corner. And you literally here try to pick the throttle back up before you get to the center of that corner. And we'll see different styles. As you can see, these guys are going to work on the rear of the car here, and it looks like they might be doing something, maybe going to make a shock change right there. They would be moving the, yeah, they're going to move the, actually they're going to move the track bar on the left side, it looks like, to move it down to get some more forward bite. We're on the left side, and they have to manually do this. And that's why you don't see this happen during the race many times. We will see it occasionally. It just takes longer to do it. So they're going to slide that track bar down on the left side, probably something like a ½ inch, and that should get the forward bite better for Kevin Harvick. But this is a really fun place to drive, but it's also very difficult because the driver really has to work hard through these flat corners.
A very demanding, flat, 1-mile racetrack. That's where we're going to kick off the chase for 2008. Our coverage begins at 1 o'clock on Sunday. NASCAR Sprint Cup action presented by GoDaddy.com. NASCAR Countdown. Alan Bestick, Brad Daugherty, Rusty Walsh, and all the gang. And then on ABC Sports, live flag-to-flag coverage, 300 laps here at New Hampshire. Back at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, NASCAR Sprint Cup Series practice ongoing. Jimmy Johnson atop the speed charts. Since the chase began in 2004, all 4 winners of this race have been chase contenders. Could that change in 2008? There are some very good drivers who would like to spoil the party. And how about this 18-year-old phenom, Joey Logano, making a debut too. He tried to make a debut a week ago, and now he will come here this Sunday. Jamie.
Well, Doc, at the top of the show, I said the theme for Joey Logano was comfort. He's trying to get comfortable. Well, what they're telling me, he is not comfortable yet. They're 36 on the speed charts. They just didn't unload this car like they did in Richmond. This is indeed the same car that he was going to attempt the race last weekend with. And they only had one practice session then, and he was top 10 the entire time. So he's looking to get more comfortable. They've only focused on qualifying runs because they must qualify on time. So they hope to get some race runs in. But right now, Doc, it's all about trying to make the show.
Jamie, he thought this would be an easier place for his debut, although he didn't control the weather at Richmond because he had never been to Richmond before. Although he grew up in Middletown, Connecticut, this is sort of a home track for him, and he won both of the Camping World E-Series events here in 2007 on his way to that championship. And he knows this racetrack.
Yeah, he does, but it just shows what kind of a bear this place really is because this is tough. I mean, not that Richmond's not a difficult racetrack, but you have banking that can help you get around there. You don't have that, and these cars are difficult to drive, and this young man's finding that out. And this would just be some of the learning curve he's going to have to go through.
Look at the lights on the dashboard. Looks like a video game.
That's what these young guys want now. They play video games all the time, so they want things to kind of emulate that. And it's amazing how the inside of these cars have changed with all the gauges and everything.
I wonder if he can check his email with that thing there. Here's the 44 on the racetrack, and you talk about a performance at Richmond. David Rudiman led a race high 104 laps and equaled again his career best finish of ninth, back-to-back ninth place finishes. This team is really on its way up.
Yeah, they really are. And I talked to David Sunday night after the nationwide race, and he was so excited. You know, he was kind of bummed out that they didn't do better than ninth because he thought they had a really good opportunity, as you see him coming in off the racetrack now. But it just shows how this team is performing now.
Great lap
and
right there.
They're really getting to the point that they're going to be a factor every week.
Right there.
29 car Kevin Harvick back on the racetrack, and fluctuating times we see him move up the charts and then back down into the middle portion of the charts. DJ Watt.
Well, they're still working on their race setup here now. So even though you see right here, there's really only from his fastest, which was his first time out, his fastest lap of 29.98, to his slowest in his third run, where they made some other adjustments that apparently weren't quite as good at a 30.04. That's only 6/100ths of a second difference. So that's not much, but they're looking for it to go the other way.
When the car goes on the racetrack, the crew chiefs climb on top of the hauler, right, Andy?
Yeah, I'm up here with Todd, and these guys, you guys were going to make just a few race runs, but you've ended up making quite a few. Are you going to go switch it over to qualifying trim here pretty soon?
Yeah, we're getting ready to scuff set tires, switch qualifying trim. We started out with kind of a plan to be a little tight, and as it turned out, we've been a little bit loose, so we kind of, altered our plan a little bit, trying to make sure we know it's only going to get warmer from here. A good chance if the weather and all screws around with us. So at the end of the day, we had to figure out where we're going. Now we'll make a couple qualifying runs and see what we got.
Well, when you're standing up on top of the truck, what are you actually looking for when you're looking at the car on the racetrack?
It's really easy to use too much brake and slide the front tire getting in a corner, and you can start seeing it slow down. Sometimes I'll tell him, remind him of that, and really just looking to see the thing running a little lower line to the middle of the corner. That's what I want to see.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Thanks for talking to us.
So they're concerned about weather changes here, which is supposed to fluctuate on and off all weekend. Jeff Gordon back where you're accustomed to seeing the 24 car at or near the top of the speed charts, second overall.
Yeah, it seems like each time he and Jimmy Johnson go out that they kind of one-up each other right here. Jeff moves back to that second spot, 6/100ths of a second off of the pace that Jimmy Johnson has set. But this is exactly what Jeff Gordon and his team are going to need to try to get themselves involved in this chase even more. I don't think a lot of people are looking at them as a contender right now, but you can't count out someone that's won the championship 4 times.
There's his teammate Jimmy Johnson. I don't think anybody would ever think that Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson both, despite the fact that Jeff hasn't won this year, are going to be factors in the chase. They combined, remember, a year ago for 6 of the 10 wins in the chase. 4 of them with Jimmy Johnson and 2 with Jeff Gordon. We were talking about drivers who are still free agents or don't really know what's going to happen next year, and I can't figure this one out. A.J. Allmendinger is, I am so impressed with what he has done and his talent for such limited experience in the car. I can't believe that Red Bull hasn't signed him as of yet for 2009.
Yeah, I'm a little perplexed at that, too. I would have thought with the limited amount of experience they've had and what they've invested in him to get him to this point and knowing these cars and these tracks a lot better, that they would be ready to go full bore with him from this point forward. But apparently there's something else that they're looking at. But I'm really impressed with how quickly he has learned these race cars. And this young man has just a lot of talent and a lot to bring to this sport.
Now, they do have Scott Speed, the Red Bull development driver, waiting in the wing. Speed, who has won 4 ARCA races and also won a truck race driving for Bill Davis this year. They're going to test him. They've already tested Scott Speed in the Cup car at Nashville and Kentucky. They're going to test him at Charlotte later on in this month. The question is, what do they do? They got 3 good drivers: Allmendinger, of course, Brian Vickers, the veteran, and Scott Speed.
Maybe they need to start another team, I guess. But they do have a lot of choices there. But I think that, and not taking away anything from Scott Speed, but the ARCA series and the truck series, that's a different type of racing a little bit than what you're going to see here. And all of these other guys are exactly. You can see how difficult it can be. You see the splitter right here. He's slowing down now. We were seeing down there as they got down into turn 1. Again, there's so little banking. These cars roll over so much that you really see the splitter come up. And what these guys are trying to accomplish is trying to keep that splitter down. And here we're on the exit of the corner. You can see that car rock back to the right rear, and it pulls the left front up. You can see him a little bit loose off of that corner. And I'm sure that's probably why AJ came in and said, we need to fix that.
And
if I'm
DJ,
go faster.
We've seen some cars go in the corner and the left front goes down, as opposed to the left front coming up. Is that the purely chassis geometry, A-frames?
Well, a lot of it is braking getting into the corner. You'll see that splitter go down, and then when it starts to come up, it's whenever you release that brake and the shocks actually start letting the car come back up, and you want to minimize that as much as possible. We can see on Jimmy Johnson's car right here. See how that splitter stays down there pretty good? You've got just a little bit of gap on that left front, but because there's so much roll, because of how flat this racetrack is, you're not going to make it stay completely down there. If you put enough shock there and take enough spring away, the car is going to hit that splitter then. So you're going to have just a little bit of that roll for the car to perform and make it work the way that it's supposed to.
One of the Hendrick crew chiefs told me, he said, don't use my name, he said, but we look at the splitter and said, if that were a blade up front, we could keep it steady, we'd be mowing evenly. We don't want uneven grass mowed. He said, basically, if you can think of that splitter as a big blade across the front of that car, we wanted to mow the yard evenly during a lap. Jimmy Johnson, where he was most of last year, atop the speed charts. Number 1, back with more in a moment. Work ongoing in the garage area as these teams are trying to get the cars dialed in for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series qualifying, which will be coming up later today. It's race number 1 in the chase for 2008, the chase for the Sprint Cup. Our top 3 chasers: Kyle Busch, Carl Edwards, Jimmy Johnson. There are the wins, 8, 6, and 4. Carl Edwards, 50 bonus points, 11 top 5 finishes. And here's the best part for Carl. The last 4 races, he had more points per race and better finishes than the guy he was chasing, Kyle Busch. Shannon.
Yeah, Carl Edwards saying that the car is just good off of 4, but it's snappy loose off of 2. He can't get the throttle down too much because it's just so loose. Right now, they are changing over to qualifying trim. Carl Edwards coming into this weekend said, at Loudon, the car has got to be perfect. He said it is hit or miss. Right now, it's missing right now for that 99 team. But guys, Bob Osborne right there, Carl Edwards, you know that these guys are going to get this car worked out. Jamie?
Well, Shannon, we were talking about Joey Logano just before that last run. He was 36 on the charts, went out and did a qualifying run. He's up to 10th. He was 10th in this same car at Richmond last weekend. He says the car is just a little loose in, good in the center, and about a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, loose off. So they're going to make a track bar adjustment right now. Stay focused on their qualifying runs because the weather's not looking so hot. Andy?
Yeah, Jamie, the 29 car over here, they're finally switching over to qualifying trim. They went out and scuffed a set of tires so they can make that mock qualifying run on that set. It's going to take them a few minutes. They've got to change a few things, maybe some weight distribution, putting tape on the grill. Got to cool the engine off, fill it up with fuel. But the next time that this car goes on the track, we need to pay attention here because this will be their first time in qualifying trim. Doc?
Thanks, Andy. Let's talk about scuffing tires and why you do it, and particularly getting set for qualifying.
Yeah, basically what they're doing here, they just want to get that newness off. And this racetrack, again, is so hard to get the tires hooked up to, especially when it's cool like this, that you want to get that newness off of them. So these guys will go out and run basically a lap around the racetrack, and then they'll come in and let these tires cool down, and that's the way that they'll qualify. See David Reagan here going out. Oh yeah, you can see the front end up and then locking up the front tires. That's just getting into turn 3 way too hard. And that's what you really fight here. You have to really be careful, especially when you get out there trying to make a qualifying attempt. If you get in the corner too hard, you lock those up, then you're going to kill your momentum into the center of the corner.
These guys obviously trying to get ready for qualifying. How would you rank this place in terms of degree of difficulty to qualify a car compared to other tracks?
I'd say other than maybe somewhere like Sears Point, this is the toughest. It's definitely the toughest oval that I can remember, again, because you just don't have time to get any heat. You have a hard time just getting the car up to speed. Going out of the pit, you're spinning the tires, the rear tires, in every single gear. And so you're just trying to work the tires and get as much heat as you possibly can. You drive off into turn 3, and you just have to drive in there. It's very important to get that speed built up going into turn 3, coming to get the green flag. And if you're not exactly sure what your car is going to do, you're hoping it's going to stick, but you don't know that for sure. So I always found this to be one of the toughest places, the toughest place on an oval to go make 2 qualifying laps.
Qualifying coverage will be coming up later today. We'll have live qualifying coverage, and there's the 18 car of Kyle Busch, and he's actively involved in trying to help these guys. Tearing some tape, looking at helping the crew get this car dialed in. Kyle has not, he is still showing 39th overall on the speed charts. 15 car, Paul Menard. They were talking about, they took these cars, DEI were talking about these cars to Milwaukee, the 1 mile Milwaukee Oval, to try to get them set up for both Richmond and New Hampshire. How does that help you?
Well, Milwaukee's a very flat racetrack. Again, doesn't have a lot of banking in the corners, even less grip than this racetrack. And if you can get a car hooked up and gripping good there, then you should have something that will work pretty well here. I know back when we had to run a restrictor plate here one time, Jeff Burton was the first one that I knew that went to Milwaukee to test, and they went up there with a restrictor plate. He came here and led all 300 laps of the race, the only time it's ever been done. So very similar. I think it would help you more here than it would for Richmond.
Yeah, they were talking about it did help them more for trying to get dialed up here. A number of teams went to Milwaukee, by the way. The Roush Fenway guys were up there. I think some of the Hendrick guys were there. We know DEI was there. As practice gets into the final 30 minutes of this session, we're starting to see these guys make shorter and shorter runs.
Yeah, we're going to see that now. There's less than 30 minutes to go here, and everybody's going to be working on qualifying and just concentrating on that side of it now. So you'll see sometimes 1, sometimes 2 laps. We see our winner here from back in July, Kurt Busch. Even though he didn't have the fastest car that day, they made some good strategies and made things work as the rains came, and he got to victory lane.
Pat Tryson made the call to keep Kurt on the racetrack when that last caution came out. The caution came out with 30 to go and everyone else pitted. He did not. The rains came back and he was declared the winner.
Yeah, you can see him lock up the front tires again, getting down into turn 3, and it seems to happen more in turn 3. There's not a lot of marks back there. You have some signs up on the wall that you can see him really lock these up. He's wanting to get off the brakes, but he's not sure that he's not carrying too much speed, and that would end up way up the groove, so you really have to be careful. Here's another car, Joe Nemechek, who's always run well here, has a win here, and right now he's sitting 10th on the speed chart.
Joe won a race here back in 1999, one of 27 different winners over the history of this racetrack. Started in 11th place in a Chevrolet. After Rusty Wallace had set on the pole, there was lots of action pushing and shoving on the racetrack, but when the day was done, it would be Joe Nemechek who would take the victory at New Hampshire. He is one of a number of drivers who will have to get in on time and speed. There's a list that will have to, we jokingly call it the go or go homers. They got to get it done. Bill Elliott, of course, the former champion. You see Joe Nemechek there. Joey Logano, who's in the top 10. Sam Hornicks Jr., the former IndyCar champion. Tomorrow night, the 5th-ranked Buckeyes of Ohio State take on the top-ranked Trojans of USC. Saturday Night Football presented by Southwest Airlines on ABC tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And will Beanie Wells play for the Buckeyes? And will it make a difference? Back in the garage area, Greg Biffle standing by with Jamie.
Well, he's pretty happy so far. We talked to Greg Irwin, your crew chief. He said, so far, so good. Greg, what have you guys been working on?
We've been working on race runs mostly because, you know, the weather's a little hit and miss, but really happy with the dish car. It's running really good. We're getting ready to make a qualifying run right now, so hopefully we'll be decent in qualifying, but pretty excited. Better than we have been historically with the new car here at Loudon.
He said he brought a different car. It's actually the car that ran at Indy. How much did that test at Milwaukee maybe help you guys for your preparations here?
I think it helped us a lot. You know, we learned a little bit geometry-wise, and we still have some more to do. We want to try some different steering arms and stuff, but hopefully we'll get practice tomorrow and get it a little bit better than it is.
Hey, we have to tell everybody, you didn't get taller and I didn't get shorter. Look, he's standing there. We're mixing things up a little bit out here, Doc.
Well, Greg needed a bit of a lift here with the chase starting, so hopefully he's one of those guys still trying to get that first win in 2008. Pretty pleased with the car here thus far, getting ready to make that qualifying run. We'll watch what happens when he gets back on the track here momentarily.
Even the little guys have a hard time getting in and out of these cars. Now, Greg's not a big guy, but you can see because of the safety issues with these seats in making them new, they come up pretty far and don't give you a lot of room to get in and out. But Greg's ready to go back onto the racetrack here in just a minute.
When drivers and crew chiefs talk back and forth about race setup, they often refer to something called the book. Let's listen in to Clint Boyer.
Like we were looking at our notes from last year, kind of the same thing happened on your first mock qualifying run, and then we went out for our second one. Your comment was I drove it a little too hard right there on the second lap, so I just remember what you did on that second lap and just add, because you don't need just a very, very little.
That's actually Gil Martin, the crew chief, talking to Clint and referring back to the book or his notes from a year ago.
Yeah, sometimes they listen a little too closely, you think, as a driver. They're taking that, you say things, and they've got it all written down. And that is good that he could come and tell him that. And Clint just went to second on the speed chart, so he must have listened pretty well.
Gil Martin there, you see on the right, squatting on top of the track beside Richard Childress. Not only did he win here last year with Clint Boyer, he pulled off the big upset win back in 2001 with Robbie Gordon. He was a crew chief for Robbie back then.
Well, we saw the domination that this team had last year in this very race and getting their first victory. So I think they're relieved now. They're in the chase. They had such a battle to get in that they can kind of relax just a little bit, even though there's a lot of pressure. Once you're in the chase, you only have 10 weeks to perform. But I think they can relax a little bit as we see Kevin Harvick heading back onto the racetrack now in his qualifying trim.
See what Kevin can do getting back on the racetrack. Remember, we told you that he did sit on the pole here in 2006 and won the race. And so everyone knows that when you come here in the fall, by the way, this race has been won from the pole 4 times. All 4 times it has been won from the pole, it has been the fall race, the September race, second race. So pretty good omen. That's why you want to be the fastest guy here in qualifying.
Yeah, and I think that probably says a lot about the teams that have kind of put things together towards the end of the year. You kind of separated yourself, and those are the teams that are performing, and guys come here and sit on the pole, and those are the teams that are up there battling for championship.
Same car Kevin had that good run last week at Richmond in, finishing 7th.
That turn really flattens out. There's not much banking, but you kind of drive uphill, and it's like you go over a little crest right there, and you can see the back of the car kick out. Kevin was carrying a lot of speed out of turn 2. They don't make a lot of adjustments in getting ready to make a mock qualifying run, but they'll do things like lower the track bar even more, putting some more wedge in it, and obviously adjusting their tire pressure quite a bit.
He led 54 laps here in June. The first time they came to New Hampshire. Now has to go in underneath Chad McCumbee, so that'll impact a little bit the speed we see on the qualifying run.
That's not exactly what you're looking. You're hoping to get 2 good clean laps when you make this type run, so that you can really get a judge as to where you are and what you have to work on if you need more speed. He's going to need some more speed. That was he's still 21st fastest right there at a 29.79, and that's about a half a second off of the quickest lap so far put up by Jimmy Johnson.
Best finish of the year for Kevin Harvick, 2nd at Bristol. Still trying to get that first win. You mentioned Jeff Burton and how he holds the record for leading the most laps. Can't get much better than leading every single one of them. He led all 300 laps here back in the fall of 2000. He also was the guy who won the race by leading the fewest laps in 1999. He started 38th and led the final 2 laps.
Yeah. Jeff knows from one extreme to the other how to get it done at this racetrack, the winningest driver here. You can see him stop down at the end of pit road. What he's doing is just waiting he's waiting for his spotter to give him a really good opening. And you have to be careful. You want a good bit because it's so hard to get up to speed with these tires. Now you can see he's got the whole front stretch. There's nobody coming. You want to make sure you've got plenty of room in front and then also give yourself time to get up to speed. And that's what Jeff has done here.
Speed charts as they go across the ticker at the top of your screen getting jumbled up a little bit now. We're seeing some guys go out and do these mock qualifying runs here in the final minutes of this first practice session.
You really see the nose of the Jeff Burton's car slam down as he got into turn 1. You see the car bouncing just a little bit. So on those bump stops, as you come up out of that corner, they just work. It's just loading and unloading on those bump stops. And still, that backstretch is pretty rough, as you can see. We've seen a number of cars with the front end moving a lot. See a splitter on the left front coming up just a little bit, but just really trying to hold it down on that left front. You can see it pulling as he exited turn 4.
Jeff Burton not known as a qualifier, and that's not being negative to Jeff Burton. Some guys aren't known as guys that go put it on the pole, but when it comes to races, I think people use the term smooth and consistent and steady because Jeff Burton will be there as the checkered flag approaches.
Yeah, he works extremely hard on his race setup. He knows that if he can get that right, that he can most of the time work his way up. But he also knows that qualifying is pretty important at this racetrack. Put him 6 quick.
10 for 29, 41, P6.
Here he talked about the car a little bit tight. So they'll come in and probably make a little bit of adjustment. There's a couple things you could do there, possibly a spring rubber in the right rear.
So he moves up in the charts. Here are the chase contenders and where they are running in terms of this practice session. You see Jeff Burton there. Being shown 6th overall. Matt Kenseth back to 34th. Kyle Busch, still a struggle for Kyle, back in 40th. Carl Edwards 28th. No surprise to see where Jimmy Johnson is. And the question is, where will they be on Sunday? We're going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. We're going to bring it to you. Live coverage on ABC beginning at 1 o'clock Eastern time with NASCAR Countdown. Alan Bessick, Brad Daugherty, and Rusty Wallace. And then our live flag-to-flag coverage, race number 1 of the chase at New Hampshire, presented by GoDaddy.com. Will the 2-time and defending champion become only the second 3-time champion in NASCAR history? No one has ever won this race from the pole. Can he make history tonight? You can count on one finger the number of drivers in the 60-year history of NASCAR that have won 3 consecutive Cup titles in a row. The only one to do it was Cale Yarborough.
This team always seemed to be a second-half team. These guys are back in a legitimate contender.
Great work, boys. That's the way we roll.
If you're going to win the championship in 2008, you're going to have to beat that guy in the 48.
Let's go out there, relax, enjoy ourselves today. We're just going out there to win this race, boys. Let's have some fun.
With that dominant performance a week ago in California, maybe serving notice. It's about time to run for the championship.
Great job, everybody. Great job. What a day, man. You guys are awesome. Thank you, boys.
You feel like you're peaking at the perfect time?
It's hard not to feel that way.
Very special company that Jimmy Johnson trying to join here in the chase for the NASCAR Cup. Could he win 3 in a row? Joining that guy, hard to find one better than Cale Yarborough. Won it in 76, 77, and 1978. Let's go down and visit with the champ, Shannon.
Yeah, down here with Jimmy Johnson. Only ran 14 laps in that practice. All 14 of those laps in qualifying trim. Why did you guys decide to go that way?
It kind of came like that. We're hopeful that this wasn't our only practice and that we can get on track tomorrow, but you know that there's enough things there to keep us from switching over this morning when we showed up and knew what the forecast was. But you know, it's working well. We've got a great car, and hopefully you know, it doesn't bite us tomorrow and the rain stay away.
Now, Jimmy, one question I get asked a lot is how important is experience in this chase. You've been in 5 chases. You've been competitive in 5 chases. What have you learned about the chase that surprised you most?
You know, different phases of the chase, different emotions come along. And just being prepared for that and worrying about the right things. And I think each chase has shown me where to focus and what to worry about. And that's what I'm most thankful for. The winning the 2 championships helped the clarity of that as well. So I'm hoping all that experience comes together and we can go for a 3rd in a row. But I know I'm going to have my hands full. These guys are pretty tough.
All right, the 48 on top of the speed charts. Jamie?
Well, Shannon Brian Vickers has been spending a little time in the garage. He is rolling back out now. Remember, he's in a backup car. Practice didn't get off the way he wanted it to. He told me he still doesn't know what happened. He was out there, looped around, got a lot of right front damage on that car. They were forced to go to the backup. He said he thinks they're going to be all right, but unfortunately in this practice session, they're not going to have any time to practice on qualifying runs, so they're going to stick with the race setup because he thinks it's going to rain tomorrow. So right now trying to get comfortable. 39th in the points. Andy?
Yeah, the 29 car went back out for a 2nd run in qualifying trim here. They put a set of scuffs on this time. First run they made on stickers, and they were okay. They just weren't up on the chart as far as they want to be. They didn't make but one small change. They took a packer out of the bump stop on the right front, let that right front travel just a little bit more, and maybe make this car run just a tick faster. Doc?
And Andy, you know what they say about history? They say history is all in the past, but occasionally history will repeat itself. And that's what this team is hoping right here, because this is the car that Clint Boyer and this team brought to this racetrack 1 year ago. He just did get in the chase in 2007. He said it on the pole. He had never won a NASCAR Sprint Cup race. And Clint Boyer opened up a can on the competition, leading 222 of 300 laps to get his first win in race chase number 1. Winding down practice, we invite you to join us later today at 3 o'clock Eastern time for live coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup Series qualifying. NASCAR now at 5 o'clock Eastern time. Tomorrow we'll kick off our coverage with Sprint Cup practice at 9 o'clock in the morning. Some NHRA action. The Carolinas Nationals qualifying at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Cup Series happy hour at 6 Eastern. And Sunday at 1 o'clock, NASCAR Countdown. Alan Bessick, Brad Daugherty, Rusty Wallace, and then live flag-to-flag coverage on ABC of the NASCAR Sprint Cup at New Hampshire, presented by GoDaddy.com. Here's a 24 car of Jeff Gordon in the garage. Let's listen in.
It's fired up. They just shut it clean off, like this grouse system or whatever messed up. Oh, there's no battery power. Jack it up with the left rear off. Make sure the battery's plugged in good. We changed that, guys. It's turning over. It fired up, and it shut off clean like the roush system just failed. I'm telling you, something has gone wrong because it fired up, no problem, and it just shut off clean.
And this team was just scrambling around. They were struggling to try to figure out exactly what the issue was. You heard there were a lot of question marks there. And what they were doing is just taking wires and plugging them into the spark plugs to see if they had a spark. They found the issue, but the team essentially just told me it was a switch issue. They had the switch in the wrong place. So it's a little bit of explaining. So let's go over to Tim Brewer in our ESPN Tech Center. Tim, what's going on with that?
Well, there's a lot of things they talked about right then, but this is actually how they hook the battery up to the car. This goes to the wiring harness. This goes to the battery. You just simply plug it together. But the other aspect is you've got 2 different wiring systems on the car, but to change the whole panel, you've got 6 bolts right here. And what we do, we just change the whole panel. But in my observation of the radio communication, what they had a primary and secondary ignition switch over there, and apparently they had it on the wrong side, and it was going through the front system, and the ignition boxes weren't hooked up.
Thanks, Tim. DJ, that has to bring some anxious moments out for that whole team, knowing suddenly you got nothing when you try to turn the car over.
Yeah, and that can be one of the most difficult things to try to find when you have something in the electrical system that's messing you up. There's so many things there that it could be.
Final minutes of this practice session. Top of the speed charts, the 07 of Clint Boyer. We will show you the top 10 in practice, and you will see that Boyer, along with fellow Chase contender Jimmy Johnson, are 1-2. You see Ryan Newman, David Ruderman following up on that great run at Richmond. Michael McDowell, boy, how impressive was he, getting his career best finish last week at Richmond, a 20th. Casey Kane, Denny Hamlin, Tony Stewart, the 7th through 10th are all in the chase as well.
Yeah, Kyle Busch just jumped up to 3rd since we did that graphic. So as much as he had been struggling throughout this practice, he just jumped himself up to where he's only 4/100ths of a second off of the quickest speed posted by Clint Boyer right now.
Kyle, eight times he's gone to victory lane here in 2008, but he's only won 1 of the last 7 events, although they were able to coast a little bit. Got to wonder from a driver's standpoint, when you're able to take to relax, does it affect your momentum? Does it affect your mojo now that you got to turn it back on?
Yeah, you have to be a little bit careful in that respect, but I think these guys kept that intensity up. They knew that every time that they could run well and try to win, that they was just adding bonus points to them. So I don't think that's a fact. We see Tony Stewart here getting ready to go back out onto the racetrack and make one more attempt here before this session's over. He's currently 11th, and all of these chase guys have stepped it up. We saw how many of them were in the top 10. Well, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th are also chase drivers. So we can see these guys have a lot of work to do, but anything can happen right here.
What in the world's going on with Carl Edwards in 38 right now in this practice session? Matt Kenseth is 39th.
You know, we heard Matt Kenseth say at the end of that race last week that he was a little concerned coming here that the Roush teams just weren't performing very well on these type of racetracks, and right now is showing up with Matt Kenseth and Carl Edwards struggling in this practice.
I was wondering when I watched NASCAR Now yesterday, our expert analysts had a little panel, and they, between them or among them, they picked either Kyle Busch or Jimmy Johnson to win the championship. And I said, well, why does no one give Carl Edwards any love? Well, I guess, did you guys know he was going to struggle this weekend?
I think the biggest thing is that, and I know whenever I left him out, I was looking more, it's not Carl Edwards, it's more the Roush organization. And not saying they're not good. They obviously have 3 teams in the chase. But I just look at the 2 other organizations with Hendrick Motorsports and Gibbs, that they have a better shot at performing week in and week out. Matt doesn't look very happy there either.
A lot more coverage to come your way. We're going to find out if these guys can get it done when it comes time to qualify later today. For Dale Jarrett, Andy Petrie, and our entire ESPN crew, I'm Jerry Punch, once again inviting you to join us back here at 3 o'clock Eastern time for live coverage of the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series qualifying. Coming up next, 2008 chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup preview. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. Once again, practice is over. Clint Boyer at the top of the charts, Jimmy Johnson, Kyle Busch, McMurray, and Ryan Newman, the top 5. So long, everybody.